Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. Glad to have you with us today. My name is Jeremy Stolnecker. I'm the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation and excited about today's show. A little bit different than some of the shows here recently, but excited to introduce you to a new guest. But before we jump into the show, just a reminder, I make the same announcement every time we come together. But if you have not yet gone to YouTube and subscribed, please do that. Many of you are listening via a podcast or on Mojo Radio, a number of other outlets. However you have found us, if you haven't yet, go over to YouTube. We have tons of content on YouTube, including this show, and we would love to have you subscribe there. You can hit the notification bell. That lets you know when new content comes online. Share this out, and we would love to get this and every episode that we do out to as many folks as possible. That's why we do these shows, and thankful for the opportunity to do that. Now, if you watch the Mighty Oaks Show, you know that so often we talk about, most of the time, we talk about veterans issues and how veterans can deal with traumas and many of the things that our servicemen and women are dealing with and have dealt with. We have wonderful guests on that speak to that. Often we'll deal with topics related to the families of those service members, how those families can help the service member navigate many of the issues that they're dealing with in life. We talk about these things all of the time. Another favorite area for us is to talk about, and that's much of what we'll discuss today, how veterans and our service members are portrayed in the media. And so much of what we learned from the Vietnam era, the Vietnam War and that era of service members was that we need to do a better job of portraying our service members, not only in the news media, but in dramatic media, in movies, in television shows, and so much of that goes to helping not only those individuals, but generations of folks who are looking to those who are willing to stand in the gap for our freedoms. And man, so many people are doing such a wonderful job with this. And we had a guest on last week, Geis, who really what he's focused on is portraying those who have served and many who have lost their lives in the right way in the media. Today, however, we have a very special guest, and I'm very thankful that he could be with us, Todd Robinson, and he is coming to us virtually because here in Southern California, we have a problem that not a lot of other people have. We have wind. we don't have a lot of other issues, but we have wind, and we were going to get together today in person, but the planes weren't flying. So we're doing this virtually. Todd is the writer and director of a bunch of stuff, and we're going to talk about some of those things. Most recently, and this just released, The Last Full Measure. We're going to talk about this film in a minute. Very, very excited about this, and I'll say right now, if you haven't watched it, you need to go watch it, but we're going to talk about it here in a second. But Todd, you've been involved in, man, I have your bio here, and we could spend the next 35 minutes just going through your bio, but you've done some incredible movies, writing, directing, producing with some incredible actors and actresses. In addition to movies, you've done documentaries, network series, all kinds of stuff. And I want to ask you to just tell us where you're coming from, how you got into this, how does someone get into this kind of world, and what you really love about it beyond this, and you'll talk about this, but beyond your professional life. You are an aerobatic pilot, and I've seen a lot of bios. I've never read that line in a bio for anyone I've ever interviewed, so that's great. Married, have kids. Tell us who you are, how you got into this world, and kind of what you're doing now, and then we'll jump into the movie.
You know how you find out if somebody's a pilot? Wait a minute, they'll tell you.
Well, I was curious because it's at the end of your bio, not the beginning. So I was wondering if maybe it was in the wrong place. But
yeah, no, it's my passion. It's my passion. I started out. I was going to be a musician, and in high school, I took a class because I wanted to date a girl, and she was the drama girl.
I've heard this story many, many times.
And then you heard this many times. And I took this drama class, and it just so happened that one of the most significant, important teachers I would ever meet was teaching that class. And she changed my life. And not only did she, instill in me this passion for theater and storytelling and film, but she also was one of the first teachers I can think of that made me feel like I had purpose. I made a 90-degree right turn away from music, which is still a passion but not a profession. And I went to drama school, and I was going to be an actor originally. I don't even recognize that guy anymore. But it did set me up in many ways to be a writer, because I understood the actor's problems. And many times, especially in film and television, the words the words create problems for the actors. I always say it's about the white space in between the ink that is really significant. And I just had a pretty natural propensity for the writing. And in about, I don't know, I'd been trying to be an actor in New York and LA for about 10 years. I began to write, and instantly, it seemed like within 6 months, I was making a living as a writer, and I've never had a restaurant job since. So, and that led me to work with some fine, amazing directors like Ridley Scott and Sidney Pollack, Shaker Kapoor, all kinds of people. And they became my mentors. And eventually I put myself behind the camera and started to do it. And here we are 30 years later.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges associated with writing? Challenge is the wrong word. What makes the difference, or what is the difference between a story that's well told and well received and one that's not? I'm sure there's a lot of variance there. But when I look at your resume, you've been involved in huge projects. I'm sure you've had some that aren't on this bio, I don't know, but with some incredible actors and actresses, A-list, not only actors and actresses, but directors and producers. What's the difference? And there's a vast difference in media. What takes something to an A-list, vice somewhere else on the list?
Boy, if I had a good answer for that, I'd have had a more successful career. It's partly it's in the zeitgeist. It can be timing, but mostly for me, actors make the world go round, because that's who the audience goes to see. Yes, there are branded directors like Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg. There's the litany of those people. And people, I suppose, do go to see their movies because of who they are, but generally it's because of the talent. And in order to get that talent engaged, these people generally, they want to do one of two things. They either want to make a whole lot of money. I refer you to the Marvel universe,
right?
Or they want to do really good work. And the really good work part is the thing that attracts me generally. I've never really been about money. I mean, I have to make money,
sure,
but it hasn't been the thing that's driven me. And I'm interested in exploring the human condition and telling a great story. And if you can give an actor something to explore something within themselves that is new to them or hasn't been done before, you have a chance at ringing them in. And in the case of The Last Full Measure, I mean, it's a bucket list of some of the greatest actors of this generation.
Yeah.
And it was really all because of sort of several central themes or ideas that the script presented that they wanted to be a part of. And when you sort of put that whole package together, it starts to look like something that might be able to make money. And that's really what drives Hollywood. So, that I'm not sure if that answers your question completely, but to me, it boils down to who is the character, what are they about, how well have I defined that in the writing, and then what are the scenes about? What do I want? What do you want? What happens if I don't get it? What happens if you don't get it? That's the stakes. Where is it? When is it? You have to answer all those questions and be precise. And then you give that all over to these amazing people that are going to make your words better than you ever imagined.
Right.
And then we start to shift, and they bring their life experience to it. And it becomes a true, what's the word I'm looking for? A composite of all of our efforts to tell a story. And they say there's the story you write, the story you shoot, and the one that everybody sees. And I think that's true. They're really three different iterations of the work. And with a little luck and a little bit of the movie pixie dust, you end up with something good.
That's awesome. Um, your your bio here, it involves a lot of film work, but you currently sit on the board of Save a Warrior, which is a very important organization doing a very important work. Your background doesn't speak to a military connection. How did you get involved in Save a Warrior? And then, we'll talk about the film, but the military issue and how veterans are portrayed and treated. Where did you connect with that?
Well, it goes back to flying, actually. I began as a civilian pilot, and I eventually worked my way up to this airplane that's called a Sai Marchetti. It's an Italian airplane. It's aerobatic, but it was originally designed as a low-cost military trainer, and it has a jet wing on it. It's very sexy looking, which is why it attracted me, because I'm a bit of a whore for things that look nice. And anyway, I restored this airplane with some partners, and a guy on the internet saw it, and he had one, and he was refurbishing his, and he reached out to me, and it turned out he was an F-4 Phantom pilot. And I said, well, if you're that interested, I'll just fly down to San Diego and show it to you. And we became great friends. His name is D. Conger, and he's a wildly successful guy. And through him, I started to meet the military aviation community.
Right.
Naval aviators, Air Force pilots, Marine pilots. And eventually we sort of formed this group, and I was trained up along with them to do what we call ACM or BFM, which is aerial dogfighting. And so I'm actually flying with guys that, wow, our country paid millions and millions of dollars to learn these skills, and now I'm being trained up by these guys. So it was pretty amazing. I still do it, but I got a sense of the military culture through this, and then to kind of hopscotch ahead, I began to get calls from Hollywood. I had some understanding of this culture of largely of men. Of course, there are women now that have been integrated into our military nicely, but so I started doing that, and I eventually, the movies one after another that I would get involved with, or screenplays, and then in the midst of, this is actually a couple of years ago now, about 3 years ago, I was just doing research on a project, and I came across Save a Warrior just on a Google search. And I went, that's interesting. And being a lazy guy, I pushed a button that rolled a video.
Right.
And there was this CNN video that highlighted Jake Clark, and it's only like 2 minutes long, and I had tears running down my face. It just spoke to me. And I did one of those weird things. I went to that little button that said, for more information, email us, and it was to no one in particular. And I just said, this is really weird, but you work in Malibu. I live in Malibu. I've never heard of this organization. I'm at a point in my life where I wanted to give back. And so I reached out, and they called me back within 45 minutes.
Wow.
And a week later, Jay Clark the founder was in Malibu.
Wow.
And we met. And I said to him, we talked, and he's a very charismatic, very smart guy, but he's a bigger than life. And I said, I got to ask you something. Is this about these guys? It's all about, I should say that Save a Warrior is about, it's a war detox cohort, 5-day program whereby we take men and women separately in separate cohorts who have suicidal ideation. And we put them through this 5 days. It's largely veteran run. I'm a civilian, but they let me in. And
the token civilian.
We roll these guys through it, and in 5 days, their lives change. It's truly phenomenal. But before any of this happened, I looked at Jay Clark and I said, "Is this about you, or is this about them, or is this about you? Because if it's about them, I'm interested. If it's about you, I'm going to have to take a pass." And he looked at me, because this was kind of a uppity thing to say to a guy I just met. And he said, it's about both. And I thought, what does that mean?
Interesting.
Well, before I knew it, this movie that we're going to talk a little bit about, I was in the middle of pre-production, and it collapsed. I was in Atlanta, and the whole thing blew up, and I was just devastated because I've been working 2 decades to get this movie made.
Mm.
And I came home on a Friday, and they were starting a cohort on that Sunday, and Jake had invited me to come and watch the what they call the opener, the first day. And so my wife says, "Get out of the house, go down to Pepperdine and go see what they're doing, because you need to get out of the house. You're
Right.
driving me crazy." So I went down there, and I walk in, and I get this big hug from Jake, and all these veterans are sitting there, bearded dudes, eyes down, chewing tobacco, spitting in cups, just like beat up looking guys. But these are war heroes,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. And Jake says to me, "Hey, I got you a seat." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, I got you a seat." And he points to these guys, and there's an empty seat among these warriors. And I'm like, No, I'm going to sit in the back
Yeah.
with the civilians. I'm going to watch."
Yeah.
And he's like, No, it's cool, man. I got you a seat." And I'm like, my resistance is going up. I'm like, whoop, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, "Dude, I got things to do. I got places to go. My wife, my dog, my goldfish, And he's like, "All right, man, it's cool, man. Just whatever you can do, And that just killed me, when he said that.
Yeah.
He's very manipulative.
Sure. He knows what he's doing.
So I'm like, what the hell? And so I pick up my phone and I call my wife and I go, I'm looking for, a Hail Mary. I'm looking for a get out of jail card, right? So I call my wife and I go, "Listen, they want me to do this for like 5 days. Like they sequester you. They take away your cell phone. Like, what? Don't I have to clean up dog poop or something in the backyard?" And she takes a beat and she just says, "Yeah, you should do it." And I'm like, No.
You're supposed to back me up on this.
What are you talking about? Right? And so anyway, I end up doing it, and it completely changed my life. I learned to meditate. I haven't cried that much in my entire adult life. It was so emotional, but in a beautiful, vulnerable way. And I watched these men just come out the other side of this completely transformed. And sorry about that. And we have Jake, the group has put over 1,000 people now through, in 6 years or almost 7 years. We've put almost 1,000 guys through the program.
Yeah.
And I think we've only lost 2.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty darn good track record. Now, guys are very carefully vetted, and we don't take just anybody. If somebody has maybe traumatic brain injury, or they've got a chemical dependency or other things, I mean, we very carefully vet them before they come in to be sure that we have what they need. But it's just been an amazing thing. We now have facilities here in Southern California and 2 in Ohio. And we actually own those now. We have one that's 40 acres and I think one that's almost 200 acres.
Wow.
So what's happening is we're being able to take on more and more people. We're training up more shepherds to be able to walk these guys and gals through 12 at a time.
That's awesome.
I make movies. I've met the most amazing people. I've been all over the world. But I got to tell you, watching these guys come through this is the most satisfying thing I've ever done.
There is no replacement for spending time with people who are hurting and who have served and who are figuring it out. Our program is similar in format. We have a 5-day program, a men's program, a women's program, and we go through. It's a pretty intense time, and we'll have civilians who, for one reason or another, are connected to the program, whether they support or whatever. And they'll say, "I just want to come as an observer." So, like you said, I want to stand in the back of the room, and so we'll say, "Yeah, why don't you come as an observer?" And then we'll drop them in a group, and we take everyone that's there, we break them into smaller groups over the course of the week, and coming on the other side of that, someone will say, "Man, I just came to see what you guys do, and it's changed my life." There is no replacement for being a part of that.
Well, it's amazing, and I'm so happy that there are. It almost feels like there are other groups that have actually spun off Save a Warrior, and your group, and it seems like it's kind of like we're all sort of tapping into the zeitgeist, and there are these there's a way in through vulnerability,
Yeah.
And being around people holding safe space for them.
Yeah.
But I left out the punchline of this whole thing at the end of this when I was about to leave, and it's sort of ritualized at the end of this thing. And this kid, I call him a kid. He's a 3 or 4 tour Army Ranger named Adam Carr. But he, as I was sort of finishing out, he whispers in my ear, "You get the secret, right?" And I said, "No, secret? What? No, what secret?" And he says, because I went in as a witness, right? And he says, "There are no witnesses."
Right.
And I just started to cry again, because I had been so wholly absorbed into this group of these men, and I'm still totally connected to my cohort. And so it's a beautiful thing. There can't be enough groups out there because, as we know, I don't know if that, I don't even think that 22 a day number is accurate, because it doesn't account for, drug overdoses, intentional suicides, like guys going over cliffs in cars and making it look like an accident so their families don't lose their insurance.
And
all that
the
stuff.
reporting is really wonky too. If you look at how that data is collected, there are states that don't report. So we don't actually know what the number is. Yeah, that's right. Today, our special guest is Jason Geis, and Jason is coming to us remotely today. Jason served 21 years in the United States Army. And I was just telling him, we're an equal opportunity nonprofit, so even those who served in the Army have a place at Mighty Oaks, and we're thankful for that. Jason is involved in a bunch of stuff related to veterans and just the veteran world and serving others, but also, and this is how we connected through the Mighty Oaks Foundation, serves as a team leader for Mighty Oaks and is very involved in the work that we do. So Jason, glad to have you. Thanks for making time. I know you took some time out of some training to join us, and looking forward to our conversation.
Really appreciate you having me on, Jeremy.
Yes, sir. Why don't we start at the beginning? Talk about kind of where you were raised and how you were raised. I'm always interested in what leads young people into military service. So let's start there, and then talk a little bit about your time in the Army, and then we'll talk about transitioning out. But where were you raised? Where'd you come from? What was it that caused you to say, I should serve the United States Army?
So I had a great upbringing in southern Indiana, a little town called Seymour, very small population, south of Indianapolis, north of Louisville, Kentucky, primarily farming, corn type community, and just had a great upbringing. My parents were together through all of my childhood, and just very blessed, and went to college and probably wasn't really ready to go to college. Everyone else was doing it, so I did it. And about between my sophomore and junior year, I realized that it just wasn't a thing for me. And I said, what are my other opportunities? And one of those was military service. So I went and checked it out, and actually took the ASVAB, and I actually enlisted and told my parents after the fact.
Yeah,
so it was
sure.
quite a
Sure.
it was quite a wow to my parents. But they were a little concerned. Obviously, I didn't do well at college, and so it's like, oh, now you're going to take on being in the military.
Right.
And it was absolutely the very best decision, one of the best decisions I made in my life.
What did you do in the Army? You're in the Army for 21 years, so probably did a lot of things. But where did you start?
I did.
What did your career look like?
So first duty station was Fort Polk, Louisiana. And the Army's got all those great hot spots in the United States.
It's definitely a garden spot for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. I was a medic in the Army, and served most of my time in light infantry airborne units like the 82nd, 101st, 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment, things like that. Did a stint in Korea. Did a year in South Korea, 5 years at Fort Campbell in the 101st Airborne Division. And then off to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, 25th Infantry Division, and then 82nd Airborne Division after that. Just kind of worked my way through and ended up at Fort Hood between my 19th and 21st year, and had several deployments. And it was interesting because not only did I have combat deployments, I also had peacekeeping and humanitarian deployments in Central America, as well as I was in Kosovo when September 11th happened with
No
the
way. Wow.
101st. So, it was a very diverse background in Army field medicine, but I loved every single minute of it.
Yeah. Where were your combat deployments?
I was in Iraq for 15 months early in the war. And we were actually the bridging infantry brigade task force that was the handoff between 1st Infantry Division and 4th ID in that very first handover between OIF-1 and OIF-2.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time. I was northwest of Fallujah, Sunni Triangle, and we replaced the 173rd Airborne Combat Team out of Italy. So it was an interesting time. But that was my main stint in post 9/11 was that 15-month tour in Iraq, and everything else was just little things, leader recons in Afghanistan and some Kuwait type missions, reconning for units going over there to be medically validated. So I just really count the Iraq deployment as my primary deployment to combat for post 9/11.
A lot of folks, and you know this, you work with us, but a lot of the men and women who transition out of the military, particularly if they have combat deployments behind them, and a long deployment like that, that's an incredible amount of time. They tend to bring some things home that they then later on have to deal with, and they find that it's much more difficult to deal with those things out of uniform than in uniform. Did you have challenges, and I'm sure that you did, that you'd be willing to share with us as you transitioned out of the military and try to figure out what the next steps were for you?
Yeah, you're exactly right when you say you kind of compartmentalize a lot of things that you experience, and it isn't until you make that transition that a lot of those boxes start opening up, and you don't have the tools in your toolbox to be able to deal with those. And a lot of times we reach for a lot of different things, or we go down the VA route and medication. And the sad thing is we don't look to our faith and our belief in Christ to kind of be the starting point. A lot of times it's one of the last choices that we make, unfortunately. But it was the same for me. I started having a lot of anger issues. It was affecting my family a lot, and drove a big wedge between my stepdaughter and my wife. And I told myself and my wife that I was going to do whatever it took to get better and to make things better with all these things that were opening up that I wasn't ready to deal with from my time downrange.
What was your relationship with God like while you were in the military? Were you a believer in the military, and as you transitioned out, or did that happen later?
I was a believer when I was in the military, but I wasn't an active participating believer. I was a Christian, but I wasn't really in a walk with Christ. It wasn't till towards the end of my career that I was a little bit more on that right track. And it definitely was after coming to Mighty Oaks, when I was at my lowest point, that I was able to actually start a walk with Christ that actually has helped change my life and my family's life.
One of the challenges so often is getting folks who need help to come to the point where they say, like you just said, you said this to your wife, I'm going to do whatever I have to figure this out, to get better. That is, in my estimation, as we've done this over and over again, that's the biggest challenge, is getting someone to come to that point. Folks will often ask, what do you do during a week at Mighty Oaks? You have these programs, and men and women come through, and so much happens in their lives. What is it that you guys do? And really what we do is try to back people into a corner where they have that moment where they'll say that to themselves. They'll say, I need to do something different. I need to change the direction that I'm going. And often people don't do that until they find themselves in one of our programs or find themselves at that low point. What was the catalyst that caused you to say that to your wife? What was it that caused you to say, I need to do something different, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do?
I think it was an incident where my little daughter at the time, she was probably maybe 3 years old. She had just done something not out of the ordinary for a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely like my response to what happened was just so wrong and so over the top that it actually caused my little daughter's lower lip to start quivering. And it just absolutely like destroyed my heart that I did that to my little girl. And my wife was in tears, and nobody could understand why I reacted the way that I did to something that was just so like normal for a 3-year-old. It was just this overwhelming response to a simple stimulus.
Yeah.
And it was like that was a kind of a defining moment of, I have a really big problem and I've got to figure out how to solve it, or I'm going to destroy my entire family and myself if this continues to go down that road.
What did that road look like for you? So you had that moment, you made that decision, and thankfully you made it before you did permanent damage. What happened after that?
Well, I of course I was already seeing the VA. They had already put me on some antidepressant that made me like a zombie, and I had to do that back and forth. And I think a lot of guys, maybe you do need an antidepressant, maybe you don't need it long term, but I think you have to have a conversation with your provider, and what's the exit strategy, and is it the right medication for you? Because everybody might need something different. So one was continuing that fight to make sure that I was only taking medication that I absolutely needed to be on the right track, and that it was the right medication for me. And then in addition to that, I sought counseling. Unfortunately, I didn't seek biblical counseling, which that's where I should have gone. But there was some secular counseling, and it all just kind of fizzled because it wasn't based in Bible, and it wasn't based in Christ. And so when it's secular counseling, at a certain point, you just get to this place where it's not going to benefit you anymore. And so I bounced around a little bit from counselor to counselor. And then that's when I came across Mighty Oaks, and actually my nanny came across Mighty Oaks, and we both kind of talked about it at the same time. And next thing you know, I was reaching out and applying to come to Mighty Oaks. At the time, it was called Fight Club. Now it's Men's Legacy.
That's awesome. So you attended the program, and what was it about that time that kind of helped you turn a corner? I mean, there are a lot of things that happen during a week like that. It's always funny to me. You've had these conversations too, but it's always funny to me what does cause someone to make a decision, what doesn't. We always think it's going to be this thing, but it's that thing. But what was the thing that caused you to kind of turn a corner and start to look at the world a little bit different?
It was a kind of a really tough week for me, because I think I went there with a lot of excuses and a lot of nobody knows what I'm going through kind of a thing. And what I realized is that the whole concept of looking at the person in the mirror and realizing that you can sometimes be a big part of your own problem. And what I realized that week through a great team leader that I had in Justin is that I had some pride and ego problems, and I had some serious transition problems from being a sergeant major in the Army to being a stepdad, a husband, and just an employee for a company that I worked for as I transitioned. And what I also realized is I wasn't in control of really anything but myself. And that it was just an extremely difficult week of realization for me, but it's definitely a week that's changed the trajectory of my life forever.
Since then, what year was that?
That was 2017.
Okay, 2017. So since that time, you become team leader in our organization, working with veterans and active duty service members who are coming through Mighty Oaks. But beyond that, the list of veterans organizations and causes that you're involved in is it's a long list. You're involved in a lot of stuff. Talk about some of the other things that you're involved in.
Well, what actually led me to meeting my wife, Jamie, was while I was on active duty at Fort Irwin in that great high desert of California.
You hit all the high spots. Man,
I did. The Army management just loved putting me in just these great, awesome places. But the people I met, the relationship building was awesome. But I got involved in a in a brand new non-for-profit that's out of Kern County and for post 9/11 veterans for Kern County called Wounded Heroes Fund. And it's just an organization where our own community takes care of transitioning service connected disabled post 9/11 veterans. And through that organization, while I was on active duty the last 4 or 5 years, I served on the board of directors, and I met my wife through my mother-in-law, who was a volunteer. And that's really what led me to getting married to my wife, Jamie, from Bakersfield, and then ending up living here in Bakersfield, which then led to getting involved in other opportunities to serve veterans. And why I left Wounded Heroes Fund after 10 years was to establish an organization called Portrait of a Warrior Gallery, Kern County, which honors the 27 men who have given their life since 9/11 from my community. And we honor them by having a portrait painted of them, not only in their service uniform, but also other things that were important to them and their family. And our motto is never forgotten, always remembered. And, Mighty Oaks did a really nice Rudis sword that we have when we walk in the front door. It's sitting on the desk. And I really appreciate that you guys got behind what we're doing. And our goal is to establish a gallery like that in every county in the state of California. And that's a long-term goal.
Yeah.
And we have 20 of our 27 portraits complete now, and it's free and it's self-sustaining financially, and it's open to the public for our community. And it's just been a really great place to bring our Gold Star family members and keep them in connection with our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do people find out and donate, support, get behind what you're doing?
It's just a matter of going on the internet and typing in Portrait of a Warrior Gallery, Kern County. There's a Facebook page, and we have a new website that's being developed. It's going to be kern-warriors.org, and it is a 501c3. And our goal, and I know we've already got a guy that's going to establish this same gallery in San Diego. And he was one of the artists that was involved in the gallery here in Kern County. And we actually have an export package that we're going to be delivering to each county's board of supervisors. So they're going to have everything they need to establish what they want to do for their community. But we feel like being able to see someone's picture helps keep their memory alive a lot better than a name on a wall or a name on a plaque, somewhere hanging in a building. So that's been really good. It's just a great organization. My wife's super involved in it. Our community's 100% behind it. We've had over $600,000 in donations. And like I said, the way that we designed it with annual recurring sponsorships, it's self-sustaining financially. And then go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to interrupt you. I'll interrupt you later. Go ahead.
Okay. There's some other things that I've kind of gotten involved in. And one thing that I want to mention to everybody is, one thing we do talk about at Mighty Oaks is margin. And even though it seems like I'm involved in a lot of these organizations, what I've really done is help people that had a good idea and help them take that idea into action. And of course, they always ask me to be on their board, and I just tell them, hey, I'd just like to help you get it going because I think it's going to make a difference in our community. And so it seems like it's more than what it really is. But there's a lady in our community that just started a not-for-profit called Cole's Comrades. And basically what that does is it helps family members who have lost a service member through suicide or something after their service connect to an organization called Tragedy Assistance Programs for Survivors, or TAPS. And since this mother of a fallen service member who died after his service, she's connected over 40 people across the United States to assistance that they didn't know that was available to them and their family. Wow. And it's also a great way for discipleship too, because she added that X identifier so she could have Bible verses and things like that on her website. And that's just been an outstanding opportunity for discipleship and bringing people together. And then another organization that we started up, it's actually in Shandon, California, over near San Miguel. is called Operation Hunt for Heroes. And what we do there is we've opened it up to all areas of service. And if you have a service-connected disability, we bring you out to Bitterwater Outfitters, and we take you on a pig or a ram hunt. And it's 100% funded. And if you've never hunted before, we take you to the range and we help you, maybe learn something new to get you outside and get you active again and not sitting around at the house isolating yourself. And we've had great success with that. We have a list of people applying from all over the state of California. We actually have a 71-year-old Vietnam single amputee, leg amputee, getting ready to come through as well. So that's been another great organization. And then a lot of people have heard of Honor Flight, and we have a very active Honor Flight here in Kern County. And I'm getting ready to take my 10th flight.
Wow.
We have 100 Vietnam veterans we're taking back to the Vietnam Wall, April 7th, 8th, and 9th. And, our community has funded over 1,500 veterans from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam to take back to DC in just a very short period of time. And then there's a couple other ones. Rise Up Recovery is a new one, and there's going to be a veteran component to that, which is going to help underinsured and uninsured veterans get counseling and treatment, and even things like ketamine treatment, which can help with post-traumatic stress as well. And so we just have a great community here in Kern County. It's not the biggest town in California, but I think it's in the top 10. But I've never seen a community that is doing more for its veterans and having people step up and create organizations that serve our fellow veterans within our own community and take care of each other.
When I was in combat, I think one of the reasons I didn't struggle in this area when so many other people did, in the exact same places, doing the exact same things during the same time period, is because spiritually I was prepared, but what that meant for me was I believed that what we were doing was just and right, and that there was a moral or spiritual component. These people are oppressing these people, and it's our job to stop them from doing that. So I lost no sleep over that.
Right.
Where others who don't have that faith foundation or spiritual foundation, they can't reconcile it, because where is the ultimate authority? What does that look like? What do I believe about, who do I answer to?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Is that,
well,
when we talk about the spiritual part, is that
I
what we're talking about?
I will get to that.
Yeah.
But before I get to that, I want to run through this list, because this is really enlightening. But yes, I agree with you, and I have a lot to say about that. But let's talk about willingness to die, right? So greater love has no man than this, and he who laid down his life for a friend.
Sure.
We see that happen on the battlefield. This is a tradition of honor in the U.S. military, obviously.
Yep.
And you see it. Guys do it. Guys lay down their lives for each other at times. Not always, but it happens. And when it's unique enough to where, it requires individual recognition for when it happens, okay? Well, these guys are willing to just kill themselves as a military tactic in order to kill many of you. Yeah. Okay, that's vastly more valuable in a military context than just that honorable sacrifice. Nothing to reduce the importance of that, but just looking at it in a military context, it's more important. It's more valuable. That's a valuable strategic tactic that they use all the time, and it's like it's nothing to them. And so then you talk about societal level support. Okay, everybody would say, yay, I support the troops in America, probably, right? Most people would say that. But let's be honest. I mean, that support is a mile wide, but it's an inch deep, okay? These people are fighting for their own land, on their own turf, right? They're fighting for their own areas that they live in many cases, or regions at least. Yeah. So there's that. And then there's the fact that, look, this spiritual, they're tapping into a spiritual power structure for what they're doing, because when you take a look at the mind-body variable advantages that we have, I relate this to, let's say, you and me and 3 other guys in body armor and helmets and baseball bats go up to 2 8-year-old boys on the playground and say, we're gonna beat the snot out of you kids. Yeah. What do you expect is going to happen in that situation? What's your expectation?
Kids will run away.
They're gonna run.
Yeah.
Well, these guys don't run. They clack off an S-vest. That's what they do in that situation. And the fact, I think guys are looking across the battlefield, recognizing their advantages that they have, right? Not necessarily by name or quantifiably, but just the sense of we have everything here. I'm better than you, I'm faster than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm smarter than you, I have all the support than you, and yet here you are. You don't care. You're still here.
Yeah.
And we're still 20 years into this, and we have not even come close to breaking these people and getting them to surrender. It's not going to happen because they're tapped into this dark spiritual energy that gives them, and so our guys see that, and somewhere inside them, it creates a sense of vulnerability. And not only that, they see the brutality, they see the beheadings and the murders and all the stuff that these guys do, and they hate. They're disgusted, and then they hate, and then somehow you lose a guy in the platoon, or something like that happens, bad wounds or something like that, wounded in action, and now it's like, okay, it's payback time. Now the motivation is not like, hey, the motivation is we're going to capture so and such, and we're going to exploit that target, get as much intel off of it, and then we're going to interrogate him and find out where the next dude is and go on that. No. Now the motivation is we're getting payback for Johnny or whatever, whoever, right? That's what happens, right? And this is where the difference between PTS and moral injury comes in. So PTS, post-traumatic stress, is an individually experienced biological phenomenon that's not preventable. It's going to happen to you or it's not going to happen to you. Nothing you do, okay? I mean, there's obviously, we know certain things make you more vulnerable, but you can't stop it.
It's something that happens to you.
It happens to you. Moral injury happens inside you, and more importantly, it's like a virus, okay? It infects others around you, because when you're in this situation, when you're contained in a military unit, in a hostile scenario, right, the issues relating to the mutual security of everybody tend to be something everybody wants to agree on, right? Because you want your status as under the protective envelope of this group to be unquestioned, right? You want to feel like, I am part of this group, I'm part of protecting everyone here is part of protecting me.
Yeah.
And so this is a basic psychological reality that everybody falls into in these hostile situations. And so you don't want to buck the general opinion of our security purposes here. Okay, whatever they are, if it's to get payback for Johnny, it's to get payback for Johnny, or whatever it is, right? So I'm not going to, wait, what about that, man? Hold on, what about, no, nobody's going to say that. And I get it, I understand nobody's going to say that. And it's understandable, but that's what happens. Okay, so this hatred, this vengeance mindset is very pervasive, and it spreads to others, okay? Then you add in this other factor, right? And this is another factor of a lack of spiritual resilience. So guys are like, look, I don't have a relationship with Jesus, and frankly, I think that if I did, that's a threat to me, honestly, right? That's the way they look at it. So I know I'll be like a Viking guy, or a Spartan guy, or a Apache Indian warrior, or whatever. It doesn't even matter. So I'm going to take on this ancient warrior culture persona, and I'm going to tap into that. And that's going to give me the spiritual, the thing that I'm lacking, okay, across the battlefield that this guy has that I don't have, I have it now.
That becomes the religion.
That becomes a religion, right? And we know some territorial stuff, right? That makes that a more powerful thing than you even think it is. But we'll leave that aside. So that's the situation, right? And so let's look at a scenario, and this is a true story of a Navy SEAL friend of mine. Okay, he told me his first deployment to Iraq. He's on his first target ever. Okay, brand new guy, just in the team. He's moving through the house. He and a partner enter a room, a dark room. They're sweeping the room with their weapon lights, and they converge on this old man who's hiding behind a bed. And as they're holding on this guy, he reaches under the pillow. Okay? In that moment, by the rules of engagement, you are cleared hot to shoot him, because that's a furtive movement,
right?
And you don't know what's under that pillow. It could be a gun, it could be a bomb trigger, it could be anything, okay? For whatever reason, these two guys independently decided, I'm in control. Whatever he pulls out of there, I can deal with it. Okay. He pulls out a picture of his grandchildren, shows it to these guys, and they're like, oh, whew, right? Glad I didn't shoot him.
Yeah.
Right. So let's imagine that exact scenario, but instead of the brand new guy in his first target, it's a guy who's been downrange 3 or 4 times. He's lost a few friends. He's been on some gruesome targets where they had, meat hooks and bloody drill bits and whatever, and he's seen stuff. He's been around. He's been hating this enemy for a long time. Maybe he's tapping into some Viking vibe or whatever it is. I don't know. But this dude, his mind is, I'm looking for a reason to take a shot.
Right.
And so he's in the same situation, same scenario, bang. As soon as that guy reaches under the pillow, he shoots that guy. And look, he's not gonna think anything of it. He's gonna find out that there was a picture and be like, oh well. Because this is the life that you're in. This is the group of guys that you're living with. Everybody thinks this way. And so nobody's gonna judge him for that. And nobody's even know. Yeah. Because it happened totally legally. There's nothing illegal about what he did. But the difference between those two scenarios is massive.
Remove the motivation of hate from that scenario. If those two guys, they saw it, they didn't know one of them pulled the trigger because he might be reaching for something. They didn't hate this guy, they didn't hate anyone else. The other guy pulls the trigger because he's looking for a reason to shoot. Does the element of hate, does that change the response on the other side of that?
I think so. I mean, I think you have to conclude, and I talked to this guy, I said, look, if you had shot him, I mean, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, I would have been bombed for sure. But, like you said, that's not what he wanted.
I wasn't trying to do that.
That wasn't his goal.
Yeah.
His goal is to protect himself and his buddy. That was his entire goal in that moment. And it's like, look, it's unfortunate, but I know that my intentions were pure in that situation. And it wasn't a personal thing for me. Yeah. I just did what I had to do under the circumstances and just did it. And yeah, there would have been a struggle there, but it's recoverable, right? Because you understand that your intentions were—
It's recoverable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Were legitimate, right?
Right.
But let's look at this other guy, right? So, okay, he goes back, he redeploys and does whatever he does. And here's the reality, guys. You're not gonna stay in the military for the rest of your life. You are getting out. One way or the other, you're getting out. You're gonna retire or you're just gonna get out or whatever. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm a Navy SEAL. I live in Coronado, okay, where Navy SEAL headquarters is. I barely see other team guys, okay? It's not like you would think if anybody's gonna run into team guys all the time and, hey buddy, how's it? Never, okay? I never do it, So that's the reality. So your average guy, right, he is going to go back home probably to wherever he's from. He's probably married, has a couple of kids, and now he's not at the team area anymore. He's not around team guys anymore. And he knows that, he's done stuff.
Yeah.
And transitioning is hard anyway. We know that. Doesn't matter why. Transitioning out of the military is a challenge for any number of reasons, right. Okay? Financial and all kinds of reasons. So, but, maybe it's not going so well. And so he's drinking a little bit and he's angry. And he's getting in fights with his wife, and his kids are not really understanding what's going on with dad. And now the enemy shows up and is acute. The enemy, the word for Satan in the Hebrew is the adversary. That's what the word means in Hebrew. Okay, that's what the word Satan means, adversary. So the adversary shows up and accuses the brethren. That's what he does. And now this guy's being accused, and he knows not only those accusations are actually totally valid.
Yeah.
And he's never told anybody about this. How many times have you heard it at Legacy Program? If my family knew what I did over there, they would think I was a monster. This is why nobody tells their family anything. This is why nobody tells their psychologist anything or their psychiatrist or whatever. It's the reason why they only tell us, because we are also combat veterans.
Yeah.
We are creating an intentionally transparent and authentic environment where these guys can tell these stories, right? This is the reason that Mighty Oaks succeeds. It's the entire reason.
And they know that people aren't going to be like, whoa, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
The context makes sense to the people they're talking to, yeah.
But this guy hasn't had those conversations. He doesn't know anybody from Mighty Oaks or whatever. And so he's drinking. His career's not going well. He's pulling out of Home Depot. He's been drinking during the day now. And he smashes a taillight, bumping into somebody, but he doesn't want to pay for that. So he drives off, and then he gets pulled over. And no, he doesn't have a permit for the pistol in the glove box. Okay, you see where this is going, right? So, and maybe he has a TBI on top of it all, and you're trying to kind of make the adaptations that you have to make around dealing with a TBI, and you got this going on. Okay, this is where the point at which I believe the suicide ideation and the reality becomes an option for these guys. We have lost. This is unbelievable, okay? This is an incredible stat. Nobody knows this. I was at a party for a SEAL friend of mine who was getting engaged in January of this year. And I ran into a guy who's a retired SEAL Master Chief, very connected to the community, has big problems with TBI himself that he's overcome.
Talk about TBI real quick.
So you're talking about traumatic brain injury. I'm sorry about that. Traumatic brain injury. And so this is a big problem for everybody in the military. Yeah. It's a huge problem for NSW, for the SEAL teams, because we do a lot of explosive breaching and shooting Carl Gustav rockets and tons of demolitions and so forth all the time.
It's a concussion, but it's a different type of concussion.
It's like a permanent concussion, basically. And it's really not treatable. They're really, in fact, it's not even really diagnosable. Yeah. Until your death. Right. You could do an autopsy and diagnose it, but you can't find it on an actual the technology doesn't currently exist to identify it. Yeah. At least not yet.
Right.
So, so this is a real, this guy, this issue, he's already got struggle. So the treatment for TBI is adaptations. So anyway, I'm talking to this guy, this SEAL Master Chief, who's very plugged in, retired guy. And he told me that 36 Navy SEALs have committed suicide in the last 3 years.
36.
36. One per month.
How many Navy SEALs are there? What's the?
Maybe 2,500 at any given time, maybe.
And 36 have committed suicide.
Yeah. There's probably 10,000 that have ever been. Okay. Maybe something like that. Maybe 11,000.
I've never heard that number, 36.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's heard it.
I do this for a living.
It's an unofficial number, okay? Right. This is not an official, nobody wants this number out there. This is a real number, okay? Sorry, NSW, but you do have a problem.
Yeah. And
this guy is a very credible source for this. And if I said his name, everybody would know, oh yeah, I know him. So this is a real issue. You wouldn't think, Navy SEAL, right? Toughest of the tough, never happened. Well, it's happening.
Well, 36 suicides too. That's not even taking into account the relationship issues, the guy who hasn't killed himself but is just
the quality of life deterioration, and yeah, totally. And so, the reality is, when you're doing stuff, when you're operating on the battlefield with a vengeance mindset, when you're operating on the battlefield, using an ancient warrior culture as your spiritual motivation, okay? You're gonna do stuff that you're never going to be able to talk about again.
Yeah.
That's just what happens.
Yeah.
That's just reality, guys. So this is a problem. You need to avoid this. And like I said, in my scenario, I didn't know much about these things going into that, but I knew that I was at some risk. And I was a mature Christian, and I took it on myself to sort of take stock of the circumstances that I was entering into, and to try to, do something proactive to protect myself spiritually from the situation. And when I was there, when we were running through these targets and we're putting these guys in the grave, it wasn't personal. I didn't take this personal. Okay, this was my job, man.
Right.
Okay, and being a warrior. Okay, let's talk about what you were bringing up earlier. Being a warrior is a noble profession. Okay, this is something that God honors, that that who God is.
Sure. Yep.
The Lord is a warrior. Yahweh is his name.
Right. Right.
Okay? That's in the Bible. Right there. That tells you all you need to know about whether or not God is cool. Like, I don't think God wants war, but he recognizes that he gave us freedom. Every person has the freedom to choose what they're going to do. God operates in an environment where he allows that to happen.
And the principle of standing up for the weaker, standing up for the lesser, standing up for those who cannot defend themselves. To me, that was the switch that clicked when I was in Iraq is, was the war just? Was it, all those questions, right? When you get there, you see farmers who are being absolutely annihilated by people who they have no control over,
right.
and on and on and on, and just the atrocities. Well, it becomes just in the sense that I have the ability to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. And so I think that's something God honors throughout Scripture.
I agree. And I think also, look, I mean, you talk about, you're a soldier, you're a SEAL, you're a Marine, whatever the case may be. You joined the military, okay? Your senior government officials, the President of the United States and the Congress, has decided, for whatever reason, okay, that we need you to go to this place and shoot these people in the face, okay?
Right.
And that decision, whether that decision to go or not is right or wrong, that's not on you. That's on them. That's their problem.
Sure.
That's not your problem. Your problem is you show up and you follow the rules of engagement. You go and hit your targets and kill everybody that needs to be killed and do what needs to be done on those targets. You have nothing to be ashamed of for having done that.
Right.
That's your job, and that's okay. You don't need any further substantiation beyond that. And the reality is, what I'm advocating for guys is to become what I call the indestructible man. And that is, when you are in Christ on the battlefield, it doesn't matter what happens. If you get killed or whatever, you're still indestructible. Your soul, your spirit goes on forever. And you be with the Lord. If you come home from that, you're strengthened from that experience, from having operated with integrity and with honor, and having served your nation, gone forward when the call was made. Who shall I send? Send me. I will go. Okay. There's huge honor in that, and there's guys that did that, who answered that call, should feel fantastic about that. And you don't have anything to be ashamed of. If you did your job, if your intentions were pure, and you shot people that were shooting at you or needed to be shot or whatever the circumstances were, that's fine. You don't need any forgiveness. There's no excuses that you need to make for that. There's no nothing. Okay, that is fine. That's your job. That's okay. And these guys need to understand that, because I think, our culture has, even though they cut the military some slack, right? As far as, okay, well, you're in the military, so you killed a guy. I guess that's cool. That's, acceptable. But, the general, disconnect that our culture has from killing, right? We don't kill our own animals, for food. I mean, we just show up at the grocery store and, buy it and just put it on the grill, and there you go. So that connection, except for, rural people and hunters, people like that, they have that connection, but just about everybody else has lost that connection. So people feel like, oh, well, I killed people. And you, obviously, what's a question that you don't want to ask veterans, right?
Yeah. Have you killed anybody?
Have you killed anybody, right? So whenever, but kids do that, you know what I mean? Have you ever killed anybody?
My kids do it.
Yeah. So I agree that's not a good question. You shouldn't ask people that. But the answer to that question, if it's yes, and you were doing it as part of your mission and within the rules, then you have nothing to be ashamed of. There's no problem. God doesn't have a problem with you for that. I guarantee you he does not have a problem with you over that. I know that for a fact, okay? So if you can become indestructible before you go downrange. And if you do, then you have something. You have a spiritual energy that you're able to tap into that's far more powerful than what the enemy has.
Yeah.
And moreover, your security is total. Okay? You as a human being, as an individual, are completely secure in every possible situation. And so that's just the way it is.
So, a couple questions. That preparation necessarily takes place before the event, correct? So, if you're talking to these young SEALs right now, or you're talking to someone else who's getting ready to go into the military or deploying for the first time or whatever, life is crazy. So, you're looking at people who are trying to prepare for life. What steps need to be taken in preparation for that? How do you become that? That's my first question. The second question is, how do you help someone who is dealing with moral injury and they really do want to reconcile that? So first, what does that preparation look like?
I mean, I think it looks something similar to what I did, which is to kind of take stock of yourself, kind of look within yourself and imagine, think about what are the things that could happen to me. Maybe the things that I listed are similar things on your list, and maybe there's other things that I didn't put in there that you're concerned about that maybe I wasn't, But first of all, I mean, number one, you need to have a relationship with Jesus out of the gate, or else, this connection is not available.
Yeah, foundationally, right?
The foundational connection to Jesus as a relationship as Lord and Savior is critical first step. But beyond that, to be honest with yourself and recognize that you do have things that you're afraid of, that there are things to be fearful. And it doesn't mean you're on the battlefield and you never feel fear again.
Yeah.
But anticipate what that might be, give that to God, and then move on.
Yeah.
And just let it go.
Yeah.
And trust Him. And you're going to find yourself in situations probably that are difficult, that are not, that put you in conflict with your concerns, like I did.
Yep.
And you need to react to those conditions by trusting in the Lord and following your principles as a person, not allowing yourself to succumb to this vengeance motivation. Because here's the thing, guys. The guys who, and this is the facts, okay? The guys who look at a Christian and say, oh, you're weak because you're a Christian and you won't pull the trigger or whatever. But I need to get raged up on rage metal for 20 minutes before I go outside the wire,
Sure.
Okay? Or I'm going to pretend that I'm a Viking today and that I'm bringing an axe on the battlefield and I'm, whack, you know what I mean? But I'm the weak one, right? Me.
Right.
I'm the weak guy.
Because you're grounded and centered spiritually.
Right. Because you need to get yourself emotionally raged out before you go forward on this target in order to do your freaking job, okay? I'm just saying, hey, you know what? I trust in the Lord that no matter what happens to me, everything will work out the way that it's intended to, and I'm just going to do my job and not worry about it. But I'm the weak guy, right? No, wrong answer.
Right.
That's the crucial reality that these guys, they believe that their rage metal parties and their ancient warrior culture fetish and the let's get Johnny, the histrionics over personal affronts that you take. Look, these guys that you're shooting on the battlefield, they don't know you.
Right.
They don't care about you. They don't know who you are. They're not shooting you out of any personal animus, okay? They're just doing it because this is what they're doing. And in many cases they're defending their region or what they think their religion is under attack, their way of life, whatever it is. They're not looking at you going, oh, you guy, I hate you personally, let me shoot you. No, they don't care about you, and they don't deserve your care, okay? And here's another thing that needs to be dispelled, and this is the military's fault, which is, and I know this happens in the teams and it happens everywhere. The military likes to talk about the enemy in terms that are dehumanizing, like they're savages, right? This is a term, this is the ultimate term in the teams. Oh, we're gonna kill those savages, whatever. They say that because they want to subtly convince you that the guy you're shooting is not actually a guy.
It's intentional.
Okay, that's an intentional strategy to get you to believe for that moment that you're not actually shooting a real person, you're shooting a half person or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. That's a real person that you're shooting. So you tell me, is it weak to know that that's a real person and shoot him anyway? Or is it weak to have to pretend that that's not a real person? Okay, you tell me which one is the weak move and which one is the power move.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you decide.
And why are we struggling on the other side to reconcile that?
Exactly.
Because you have a moment of clarity where
That's
you
right.
realize. Yeah.
So, and look, on the other end of this message is too late for a lot of guys. Okay, you've already been there.
The be prepared
It's
message.
already happened.
Yeah.
You've already crossed this line at some point. But what these guys need to understand is there is redemption and forgiveness available to you in the Lord, brother. Okay, it doesn't end with that. It's not like, oh, it's over now. I did this and I can't take it back.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't take it back. But there is redemption and forgiveness for this. You can move forward in life without it dragging you down and holding you back, preventing you from succeeding, preventing you from enjoying your family, preventing you from leaving a legacy, a positive legacy, which is something that every man wants to do.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is a very important concept that guys need to understand. It's never too late. We talk about this, the legacy class. I mean, that's the class, right, in the program.
Yep.
I know that, where it's like, hey, no matter what your legacy has been to your family up to this point, you have the opportunity right now to change directions, move forward boldly in the Lord, and change the way you're doing things and leave a positive legacy for your family.
Yeah.
You can do that right now.
Yeah.
Every one of you guys can do that right now, who've already crossed this line, who've already made these mistakes, and you can move forward.
Yes.
And you don't have to let this be a millstone around your neck and drag you down to the bottom of the sea. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
So those are the messages. If you haven't been downrange yet, if you've never been forward, become indestructible now.
That's great.
If you have been, then there is redemption and forgiveness available to you now. Your legacy has not been written. You still have whatever amount of time you have to make it change, to make it better. You can do that. That is a real opportunity for you right now and forever.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Matt. And both of those are tied up in God and His plan for your life. I think on both sides of that, we tend to want control. So we say, God, I'm praying for this thing, and if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be upset at you. Well, that's not how it works. It's releasing control to God. And on the other side, we say things like, I need to forgive myself. And that's an impossibility. We need to accept the forgiveness that God offers, that's where freedom comes. So fantastic. Man, what a great conversation. Where are we on the book? It's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably about 80% through, but it's just the content is there. It's just how to organize it exactly is tough. That's really, I'm working with a kind of an editor to kind of help me, and I've struggled with whether or not I should incorporate my story into this book. I'm not sure that I should. Yeah. Or maybe I really should. I don't know. And how to do that is kind of hard. But the principles that we talked about, this equation, mind plus body plus spirit equals wellness, right? That equation, being well, being prepared for this, that stuff is, I have that content down. And I feel very confident that, if people can internalize this reality, because what struck me when I first went through Fight Club, when we first started, right, and became an instructor back in the day, the thing that struck me about the curriculum was that it was so perfectly intuitive for a guy who's in the military. You're like, yeah, of course. Like, it just makes perfect sense. The way that it's laid out, the way that it's structured, you're like, yeah, dude, I knew this, but I needed to be told this. I already knew it on some level, but not cognitively. I knew it sort of in my gut, basically, right? This is the same thing, I think. You'd have to agree that you know this.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, viscerally, you recognize what I'm telling you is reality and is truth, but you just couldn't. It's not organized in a way that you could like internalize it and go, okay, I cognitively understand it now. Yeah. That's the purpose of the book.
That's great.
Is to sort of bring that visceral recognition of this to a cognitive level that you can understand and employ into your life as a warrior.
Yeah, awesome. Such an important topic, and I think between PTSD, TBI and this. Those are three very different yet oddly related, connected events, but understanding the difference is so important.
Yep.
So thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Appreciate your time today. And again, for those of you that have not yet subscribed to the channel, before you go, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Leave us a comment, share this content out. We'd love to, again, continue this conversation. And for those of you that may be listening at Mojo 50, thank you. We love our partners at Mojo 50, as well as the various podcast sites where this can be found. If you're listening and not on YouTube, jump over to YouTube, subscribe. A lot of great content there we'd love to share with you. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.